Hi, everyone. It's Margaret Manning here with lifeafterdeath.com. Lifeafterdeath.com is a community of people who have an interest in the topic of the afterlife, reincarnation, near-death experience, and all topics related to spirituality. And we are talking to different experts in areas that have expertise in, that we can learn more about these areas of interest. And my guest today is Annie Mattingley. Now, Annie is a writer and a speaker, and she is an after-death communications researcher. She was a hospice volunteer when both of her parents died within a 2-week period, and she was very intrigued by the mystery of death. And when her daughter Randy committed suicide in 2010, her life just changed completely. And she started talking about this experience with other people, and her research brought her to some amazing conclusions. And her book, which is called The After-Death Chronicles, is all about these interviews that she had with people who shared her experience. So welcome, Annie. It's great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here, Margaret.
Thank you. I'm so happy that we've had a chance to talk. We've had a couple of other interviews that we're going to be, releasing, and this one is specifically on the topic that you just know so much about, which is how our beloved who have passed on, who have died, can actually communicate with us. Now, it'd be great if you started with your daughter. I mean, how did she start talking to you? And then let's go through, I think you've got 9 ways or so that you've talked to people who, experience that conversation.
Well, the way that all of the contact that I've had with my daughter, with the exception of a couple of dreams that were way afterwards, but all the early contact, at least, was either through physical sensation, through my body, kind of a goosebumps sensation that comes from starts with the feet and goes all the way up. Right. It's usually on the left side. If she really wants to get my attention, it can be the whole body.
Wow.
It's verbal.
Like a quivering or cold or?
It feels like goosebumps. It's a shivery kind of a feeling, like the same one you would get if you were cold.
And what do you do then, Andy? Do you just sit down then and just let it come to you?
Well, it doesn't. I don't know that it's ever come to me in a situation where I had to sit down. It's usually when I am already either sitting at my altar or lying in bed. And often when it comes when I'm doing some spiritual practice.
Right. That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I'm more available then. However, when I asked her about that once, she said I do a practice of mantras. She comes for the mantras. And she explained to me that the mantras and prayers and meditation, contemplation are wonderful for both the living and the dead.
That's very powerful. Okay, so your daughter communicated to you through physical signs. What other ways have people reported that communication happens?
Well, the most common way is dreams.
Right.
That's the way that people can accept most easily. So that's the most typical. But there are people who have visions. They are often in bed as well because, again, we are still and more available. We're likely to be lying in the dark, and the visions will be often lit with an incredible light. People say, a bright, bright white light. They repeat the words because there aren't words to say how that light is, because it is different from the light that we experience from in our world.
Are there words associated with that? Obviously, at any time, I mean, the light is communicates some not verbal, but some feeling or some message.
Yeah, well, it often has, in the middle of the light is the person, a vision of the person. The person is glowing with this light, and they will often say the most common thing, which is, I'm okay.
Yes.
A simple sentence that just it has a very powerful effect on us.
But isn't that what we want to know, really? I mean, whatever the circumstances, I mean, death is not a pleasant thing to experience if you're in pain or if you are, just troubled. But just knowing that, to say, I'm okay, I'm all right.
Yes, it's a very powerful sentence. They don't have to say anything complicated.
Yeah, that could change your whole life, can't it? Just that 4 words. 2 words.
Yes. Yes, and I've heard people say that, that they were so distraught and so worried, and then they had a simple dream or a vision or just heard the voice and knew, the voice. We know the voices of our beloveds, and they don't change. When that voice comes, it is recognizable. And just to hear that I'm okay makes everything different. It doesn't take your grief away.
Yeah,
You're still sad.
So talk about some other, I'm looking at my list here that I've read on your website. The other one is electrical, or, well, I guess physical manifestations is what you're just talking about. But What is electrical? What do you mean by that?
Lights can flash, blenders that go on when there's no one in the kitchen, television stations that change, televisions that go on and off. It's the way that has been explained to me is that electrical energy, that the dead still have an energy that's in alignment with electricity, and so that's an easy thing for them to manipulate. And I had the experience of it only once, but it was at my daughter's memorial service when the lights went out before the service. There were no lights in the whole space, and there were no windows in the space. So we lit it all with candles, which was totally beautiful. And Randy loved candles, so that seemed fine.
Maybe she wanted the candles.
Maybe. Yeah. And then during the actual service, the minister was talking, and he mentioned the word suicide, which he told us later he had forgotten to ask permission whether he could talk about that, which we would have given him. When he mentioned the word suicide, all the lights came on. And
wow.
At the same time the lights came on, there was this gasp in the room. I did not know this. She was a doctor, and the woman who told her clinic that she had died did not tell them that it was suicide.
Oh my gosh.
So they were in shock. And what I came to believe at the time, her former partner, my daughter's former partner, said, "Oh, it's Randy." And I'm looking at him like, "Are you crazy?" I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
But now that I've heard of all these other experiences, what I believe was that she was wanting to shed light on this. She wanted
to expose the truth.
Expose the truth. Exactly.
Wow.
You said it well.
How powerful. That's incredible. Okay, so I'm getting goosebumps here. We talked about smells and scent. That's another way, isn't it? That and I'll tell you about smells and scent. I'll actually even talk about one just briefly. When my father died, I was walking from the service to the car, and I was walking down a driveway that had no plants, no flowers. We're just literally in the middle of a stone path. And all of a sudden I smelt this amazing fragrance of flowers. No. And I was like, no, seriously. And I looked around like, well, that's really odd, because I was expecting to see a magnolia tree or a rose or something, but it was just like it was in Detroit. It was like a very bleak landscape. But yeah, and I often thought, like you said, that they have an energy after they die where not so much that goes on forever and ever. I didn't know that or didn't think that, but that moment there was and it was calming.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said.
So, right. It's the effect really that reveals the reality of the connection.
Yes.
If you had just thought, well, isn't that weird? Then
and walked on, but I made an association.
Forgotten about it, but you didn't forget, and it changed how you felt.
What about voices? Talk about what your daughter, what it sounds like. What is it in your head? Obviously it's in your head, but tell me more about that.
There are two kinds. The auditory connections there are two types. One is that when the sound comes from the outside, just like your voice is coming to me and my voice is coming to anyone who's listening to us.
Right, all right.
The other is when it's actually inside, and that's harder to explain. The first time that she came, it was outside. And it was recognizable as her voice.
Wow, okay.
And it sounded no different than if she was in the room. I turned my head, because that's what it sounded like. All of the other times that we spoke, it was inside my head. I don't know why the difference. And frankly, I did not ask this question of many of the people that I interviewed because I didn't realize the difference at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that came up, I went, oh, and I remembered that first time had been different. And so I only had a chance to ask a few people.
Isn't that interesting? So voices, I mean, that would be kind of spooky, actually, though. Kind of, were you frightened at the beginning?
No, because it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I wasn't frightened at all.
Yeah.
It was the opposite. It was like, oh, this is Randy. And I knew that she was okay because I could hear her voice.
What a beautiful gift she gave you. But the other thing, what about nature experiences? We talked about in another chat about butterflies, and how often does that happen?
That's very common. And it can happen even to someone who lives in a very urban place because we always have birds.
This is true. They're everywhere.
What happens is that birds and butterflies or wild animals or even pets can do things that are out of character. You're startled by them. If a woman goes on a 5-mile hike and a butterfly comes right beside her head and stays with her for 5 miles. This is not your common.
This is not normal butterfly behavior.
It's not normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal.
Well, I think birds and butterflies are just beautifully, they're just mystical anyway, just how they can fly. How cool is that? I mean, that's amazing.
Yes. Would that we could do that.
So what else have we got?
Cloud formations can be very, very, very specific. Rainbows. Things can happen that you look at them and you go, this can't be. What I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing can't be, but yet it is. Mm-hmm. So that tells you that there is a message going on. I don't know how they do this, the dead, but I'm curious. It's one of my first questions when I get there.
Well, they do it presumably because, and this is what's so, I'm not answering that question, but what's so wonderful about what you say is that they have an intention to communicate to us, to help us, that they still care about us after they've gone to this other place, wherever it is. They don't just go on they actually are connected still. And I was talking to another woman who's a medium, and she was talking about, how certain spirits they'll know if you've got a toothache, or if they'll know like small details. They'll just say, Daddy's got a toothache. He's not telling you about. Just silly things, but it just proves that they're in her opinion, they're there watching you.
They're there, caring. And they really care, and they know things that we can't know sometimes, so they can be really helpful.
Do they know lottery numbers? This would be great.
I don't know. I haven't had any experiences like that. They're interested in helping us to not hurt and to be well. To be well.
The one I just noticed in my notes here was synchronicities, where things happen by chance. So that's another interesting one.
It is. It's quite fascinating. And it's one that is easy for doubters to doubt because they just say it's coincidence. But again, it will have that feeling with it. You come upon something that seems in perfect alignment and like a connection with this person. And it can, if you can allow it to, you can feel the feeling of the connection.
Yeah. I think everything you've said here, you've sort of ended with that topic or that theme of if you open your heart, if you are ready for it, if you are willing to suspend, your normal logic, then these types of conversations make perfect sense.
They do make perfect sense, although I do not want to leave anybody with the feeling that they may not be doing it right. I'm not opening my heart enough because I'm not having the connection. Because then we get back to the mystery that we don't know why or who will connect with us.
That's a really good point, Annie. I'm glad you made that because my comment did sound a bit judgmental, and I didn't mean it to be. It was more, it was more just the openness helps. But yeah, it's a huge mystery. I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much. I encourage people to go out and check out your website. It's anniemattingley.com, and also your book, which is the After Death Chronicles. And I was just reading all the great reviews you've had of it. People really, it changes their lives. So if you're interested, go check it out. Thank you, Annie, so much for being here. I appreciate your time. It's a great conversation. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Margaret.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Life After Death YouTube channel and visit our website at lifeafterdeath.com. We are a community of people who are fascinated by the topic of life after death and subjects like near-death experience, the afterlife, reincarnation, and spirituality. Together we are exploring and discovering these topics together with curiosity and an open heart.